Welcome to Thinking Green. Now, fluoride seems to be one of those issues that just doesn't go away. The World Health Organization, all of our leading medical authorities here in New Zealand are absolutely sure and certain that fluoride is the way to go. Why? Because it prevents dental decay. Cut and dried argument, you'd think so, but it's not. It's still out there. People are still unconvinced, or some people are still unconvinced. Tonight we're having a debate both for and against fluoridation in water. We have two special guests. We have one of New Zealand's most eminent scientists, Dr. Mike Berridge. We also have perhaps the foremost evangelist, if I can say that, against the use of fluoridation in water, Dr. Paul Connett from the USA. Paul, perhaps we can open with, you have our experts got it wrong.
Yes, they have, but you used the word evangelist. Unfortunately, this is not a discussion on waste, because I had an answer prepared for that, which is that God recycles, the devil burns, and I haven't yet got one for fluoridation. Yes, I got involved in 1996. My wife twisted my arm. You know, the prevailing attitude in the United States is that people opposed to fluoridation are Looney Tunes, and I didn't want the issue. But when I started to read the issue, the papers that she gave me, it struck me that whilst fluoride is not very reactive chemically, it's extremely active biologically. And that is why I believe that nature, in her wisdom, has kept fluoride away from the newborn baby. The level of fluoride in mother's milk is remarkably low. So low, in fact, that if a woman bottle feeds her baby and uses fluoridated tap water, she'll be giving that baby over 200 times more fluoride than nature intended.
So hang on just a minute. So our experts have got it wrong. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think they've grasped the significance, and maybe Mike will tell us. I don't think they've grasped what we are learning from the fact that fluoride is so low in mother's milk. There's not a shortage of fluoride. And in the whole process of evolution, and there's no benefit for fluoride. It's not a nutrient, but it does a lot of harm. It interferes with enzymes and so on. So the baby's being protected by mother's milk.
What about the primary reason why in this country we have it in our water supply is prevention of dental
that's the story.
Decay.
That's the story, but the Cochrane Review, which is the gold standard for reviewing and doing meta-analysis on health issues, has just done a report in 2015, and they showed that many of the claims that are made by your government and by dentists are just not true. There's not clear evidence that it reduces tooth decay in adults. There's not clear evidence that there's any benefit over topical effects of fluoride, brushing your teeth. There's not clear evidence that tooth decay goes up when fluoridation is stopped. And there's not clear evidence that it decreases the disparity between income groups. So a lot of these things which come out of these mantras, which people take at face value, just don't stand up to scientific scrutiny.
Well, I'm sensing that there's a bit of steam coming out of Mike Berridge's ears about now. What is your reply to that? Right.
Yeah, I want to step back a bit. I want to ask a question about this country. We have a problem in this country. This country has a geological past. That geological past means that this country is deficient. Its soils and its water are deficient in certain elements. We don't argue that this country is deficient in selenium. We don't argue that this country is deficient in iodine, a very similar element to fluoride, to fluorine. We accept that, but this country is also deficient in fluorine according to World Health Organization recommendations and standards, which say that fluorine in drinking water is best at about 0.7 parts per million. I think they give a range. We have water that I think in New Zealand on average is around 0.1 parts per million. So we are deficient. We know what happens when we have deficiency in iodine. We get goiter. We get major health problems.
And if we have
goiter was
defici-
endemic in this country in the 1920s and 1930s, soon after population and the population began to expand. Iodine was introduced into salt in the 1920s and 30s. It had very little effect because it was introduced at too low a level. It was increased. Levels went up by 8-fold, I think it is. And by the 1950s, goiter had disappeared from New Zealand. Now, goiter was obviously a major health issue. It relates to our energy, it relates to overall health. And the issue with iodine, in fact, is not that dissimilar to that with fluoride. We are deficient in fluoride in the soils and waters of this country. We need to do something about that deficiency because even though it was regarded at one time as an essential element, you're right, it's no longer regarded as essential, but it is important for optimum dental health. And I'm looking at the broader spectrum, birth to adulthood. So I think it's important to put this in a context, and that is the context that both iodine and fluoride are a problem if they are too low, and they are toxic if they are too high.
We get
there's
that, but I think what Mike's saying here too is that it's not about whether to have that property, be it iodine or fluoride or not, but the quantity. Yeah. Now, do you accept, Paul, that we need any form of fluoridation at all?
You could have perfectly good teeth without fluoride, and you can find that in countries. Topical fluoride may be, but you can have perfectly good teeth. The fundamental problem with what Mike has said, and by the way, thank you, Mike, for being here. I've waited 12 years to have this debate in New Zealand. No one else has been prepared to do it. You are, and I appreciate that. But he's confusing a very important element for health, which is iodine, with fluoride, which there's no indication it's good for health. As I said, if you want fluoride, you can get it. You can brush it on your teeth and spit it out. The other difference is that fluoride impacts many different biological systems. It's harmful to the body. And if he's right that fluoride is a nutrient or a benefit, that means that nature screwed up. Every single woman on this planet, according to Mike, is deficient in fluoride. This is a fundamental mistake of biology. Who do you believe as far as what the baby needs in its first meal? A bunch of dentists or Mother Nature herself?
Paul, your body is full of fluoride.
In my bones?
It's there, it's in the water, it's in the soil. So regardless of what you think...
I thought you said there was a shortage.
The New Zealand soil and water is low in fluoride by world standards, by recommended World Health Organization standards. Yes, it is low. And this government believes, as does the World Health Organization, as does the US government, and many other jurisdictions around the world, believes that the level that is safe and that has never been shown to have harm on human health but to have a lot of health benefits is around 0.7 parts per million.
Yeah. Which are significant organizations.
Yeah, significant. He forgot to mention that the World Health Organization, in its suggestions on fluoridation, is before you fluoridate, check to see what levels of fluoride are already being consumed by the public. Never done in New Zealand, never done
in Britain.
It has. Oh, very seldom.
All of the waters
where are the studies that
there are 100 different water supplies in New Zealand. We know that some water supplies in New Zealand...
I'm talking about water, I'm talking about if you were interested to see how much fluoride your kids are already getting from many sources, toothpaste, pesticides, and so on, what you would do scientifically is to do a survey of dental fluoride.
There was a study done of this in 2009.
Yes. Dental fluorosis is not a health problem, it's a cosmetic problem. And furthermore, at the recommended levels of 0.7 parts per million, I think there is almost no fluorosis if you increase that by 5 times, up
And just to explain to viewers,
up to 5 parts per million, you will begin to get fluorosis.
Mike, just for the benefit of viewers, what is fluorosis?
Fluorosis is a white mark across your teeth.
So it's a pitting, a discolouring?
No, it's not a pitting. It's a coloration that is visible. It has no health consequences.
That's your understanding too?
Well, no, what he's forgetting to say, Mike is forgetting to say, is that dental fluorosis is a biomarker that the child has been overexposed to fluoride. And it is kind of a belief system that no other tissues are being impacted when this occurs. And yet studies from China are showing a lowering of IQ and more lowering of IQ with severe dental fluorosis than moderate dental fluorosis, than mild dental fluorosis, and very mild dental fluorosis. And so there are concerns about levels lower than 1 part per million, lower than 0.7. In fact, the lowest level of fluoride that lowers IQ in one Chinese study that I'm very familiar with is between 0.75 and 1.5 parts per million. That's where you see the lowering. And so you've got absolutely no margin of safety there. No margin of safety at all, because we're only comparing concentrations, which in fact promoters do all the time. What you've got to compare is doses. How much dose causes harm? And do we have an adequate margin of safety from the dose that children in New Zealand are getting? Now, problematic with that particular study by Zhang in 2003, problematic is that those children weren't using fluoridated toothpaste. And they were breastfed, not bottle-fed. So there are many children in New Zealand who are getting higher doses daily that found a lowering of IQ in this study.
Are you familiar?
I presume you're familiar with the Dunedin study that compared populations that were exposed to fluoride and were not exposed to fluoride, and followed them over a number of years with regard to IQ, and found in a highly controlled scientific study no difference between the population that had been on fluoridated water and the population that had been not on zero fluoride, because all New Zealand waters have some fluoride, but on low fluoride.
Mike, have you read the study?
I have.
How many people were in the study group?
Well, you can...
Okay, let me tell you. There were over 900 children in the group drinking fluoridated water, but there were only 90-something in the group that was not drinking fluoridated water, and about half of those were taking fluoride tablets. So you really didn't have a control group. That has been highly critiqued, that study, in the same journal it was published, the Journal
Well,
of
it was an
American
international journal that accepted it by peer review, and I question your peer review of that paper.
Read the critique of it, Mike, and you'll find...
Can we just interrupt briefly here? Paul, can we take it right back to basics? Are you opposed to any form of intervention with fluoride in terms of for the prevention
I think it's
decay?
absolutely lunacy to put it in the water, because once you put fluoride in the water, you can't control the dose, you can't control who it goes to.
So what do you
wait a minute.
Yep.
And you're violating the important individual right to informed consent to medication. There's nobody studying side effects. The governments like New Zealand have practically done no health studies at all on the communities that this is doing. They're doing this too. And so it's a very, very poor medical practice.
So what is your suggestion then should people ingest fluoride in any way, shape or form to prevent tooth decay?
I think what people should do, and particularly the New Zealand government, they should look to Europe. Most of Europe does not fluoridate its water. 97% of the European countries do not fluoridate their water. England has 10% of the population drinking fluoridated water. Spain has 10%. Ireland, which has mandatory fluoridation, which has 73% of its population. The rest don't use fluoridated water. 4 of them use fluoridated salt. So, but their tooth decay, according to World Health Organizations, is coming down as fast in the non-fluoridated countries as the fluoridated ones. In fact, steeper. Now, sorry, Cameron, I must finish this thought.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but here's the thing. Look to see what they're doing. Look at a Scottish program called Child Smile. And the Danish program, which has the lowest tooth decay in the world, the Nexo program, which is based upon education and diet, their tooth decay rates are below New Zealand's.
So I'm just trying to get that clear.
Yeah.
That what you're proposing is no fluoridation.
I'm saying no fluoridation of the water. We leave to people to decide whether they want to brush it on their teeth and spit it out.
Toothpaste.
Yeah.
So, Mike, this is this argument about a mass medication via water, whether you choose to have it or not, versus application of fluoride via toothpaste. Does that, in your opinion, work?
Well, it's a nonsense argument to start off with, and that has been demonstrated by the High Court decisions in New Zealand and by the Privy Council in London. And it's a nonsense argument because fluoride is naturally present in our bodies. It's naturally present in the water we drink, regardless of whether we fluoridate it or not. It's naturally present in the environment. And therefore, it can't in any way be regarded as a medication. It is a natural component of our bodies. It's a mineral, isn't it? It's a mineral that is present in our bodies. It's present at some level in our bones, and it incorporates into tooth enamel in such a way that it strengthens and causes resistance to tooth decay. And that is particularly important with the changing and the Western diets, which load young kids up with high sugars, which generate enormous problems with regard to health. And it's a problem in New Zealand. We know that something like 29,000 children under 5 in New Zealand have teeth extracted. And most of those are in areas of New Zealand that don't have fluoridated water. I was brought up north of Auckland without fluoridation. I'm one of the lucky ones. I don't have dental problems, and I was brought up in an area without fluoride in the water. However, that doesn't mean that from a community point of view, the community would not benefit from having fluoridated water in Dargaville.
Well, Northland
certainly
has
the Maori population, that's right, very, very bad.
But I think,
the worst in New Zealand.
Yes.
I think Mike would agree. The two main causes for tooth decay, and you alluded to one, is too much sugar, not too little fluoride, too much sugar, and not enough teaching of dental hygiene. Most of these anesthetics, surgery under anesthetics, are for baby bottle tooth decay. This is when a baby sucks on a bottle for hours on end with sugar water, milk, or fruit juice, even Coca-Cola, sucking on it for hours on end. It rots the top teeth down to the gum, the primary teeth, the first
I think
teeth.
we're agreeing on something.
We agree on that.
Yeah.
But their rates of baby bottle tooth decay are no different in fluoridated communities and non-fluoridated communities. Fluoride does not correct those ravages, but in Scotland and in Denmark, one of the reasons that those programs are cost effective is that with this early teaching of parents and children, you eliminate this major cause of tooth decay, baby bottle tooth decay.
Paul, you know, you're a minority voice, let's face it, in this argument. What do you feel, that there's a conspiracy going on? I mean, what is your belief?
Well, first of all, as far
a
as
conspiracy of science?
No. First of all, most of the dentists only get taught one thing at dental school. I'm not sure what is taught at medical school. And you've only got one dental school in New Zealand, in Dunedin. I think if the majority of scientists in this world was to read this book, which I wrote in 2010, we went through all our arguments. We made all the arguments transparent. We documented everything with the scientific literature, 83 pages. And when I got to the end of this presentation, I said to the Ministry of Health, I said, look, we've done our job as 3 scientists opposed to fluoridation. We've made our arguments absolutely clear, transparent. I said, now it's your job. It's your practice. It's your practice that you promote throughout New Zealand. Get some of your civil servants to go through this book chapter by chapter and write a critique, a scientific critique, documenting with science that we are wrong. After 6 years, I've received nothing, nada, zilch. And yet the Minister of Health goes on television and says opponents of fluoridation, I assume he included me, are misrepresenting the literature.
Another
They won't be.
considered analysis in New Zealand
Well, so
is...
where's the misrepresentation, Mike?
Sir David Skegg, who is one of the world's leading epidemiologists and authorities on health, public health related issues, essentially wrote a large government-sponsored, along with Peter Gluckman, a document on fluoridation in water and the health issues surrounding it.
Yeah.
Now, I respect David Skegg. I think he's one of our stars in New Zealand, and I don't think, having looked at that, I cannot refute. I can't fault anything he said. What he said in that statement that was read and backed up by the Prime Minister's science advisor, Peter Gluckman, are very similar to the arguments that I made in my book, which was a very short chapter, but presented in a way that it communicated what I think are the science issues and the community issues surrounding fluoride in New Zealand waters.
Now,
and they relate to the things that I've been talking about.
Okay, but I want to quote here a sentence from this. I have this Gluckman-Skegg report, and quite frankly, it's junk science. But let me give you one example.
Junk science?
Yes, it is junk science. I'll give you an example which shows it's junk science.
So two leading scientists in the world, Fellow of the Royal Society of London, Fellow of the Royal Society of New Zealand, both of them are junk scientists?
I said this report is junk science. Maybe
but they are scientists. They stand by their reputation.
Okay, well, let's see how their representation stands with this sentence. Talking about IQ, talking about the meta-analysis done by Harvard, they write, the claim shift of less than one standard deviation suggests that this is likely to be a measurement or statistical artifact of no functional significance. Now, do you know what a half a standard deviation would be?
Well, most of our viewers won't.
No, okay, 7 IQ points. 7 IQ points, they are saying, is of no functional significance. A drop of 7 IQ points would halve the number of geniuses in your society and double the number of mentally handicapped.
Well, we're not really in a position to interrogate the kind of detail that you're talking about now, but with the place of fluoride in our diet, in our natural environment, which it does occur in because it's not a chemical, is it? Yeah. It's a mineral, a naturally occurring mineral.
Which nature, in her wisdom, did not put into baby's first meal because she suspected, I think, that it was very toxic. And so mother's milk is protecting the baby from a toxic substance. Water fluoridation removes that protection. Now, before, and I didn't have a chance to respond to this, Mike was talking about the High Court saying here it's not a medicine, it's not medical treatment. But even High Court judges can't change the English dictionary because the dictionary of a medicine is a substance used to treat, prevent, or mitigate a disease. And what are we putting fluoride in the water? To treat, mitigate, or prevent a disease. It is a medicine by every dictionary that you pick up. A medicine is defined by its purpose, whether it works or not.
And your concern about that would be, therefore, if it is a medicine, that there's a mass medication going on.
Absolutely.
And that people are not having choice in that matter.
And the New Zealand Ministry of Health is going to make it worse by taking the decision away from local communities, where they've always had the right to choose, and giving it to the district health boards, which we know, wink, wink, are going to follow the instructions of the Ministry of Health. So this is mandatory fluoridation by stealth.
Mandatory medication by stealth. What's your response to that?
Well, I don't regard it as medication. Our courts don't regard it as medication. The Privy Council doesn't regard it as medication, and therefore I'm not prepared to accept a definition put up by Paul that anything that is that you're given to address a health issue is medication. That is a crazy definition of medication. But anyway, beside that point, I would go and be a little more provocative and say that, in fact, bring it back to the subject of this debate, that fluoride in water is a green solution to a major health problem that is increasing in young people in New Zealand and worldwide. It is green because it is natural. And therefore, I think that we can look at it in rather the same way as we look at iodine. Iodine in our salt is essential for human health. Selenium in our diet is essential. Fluoride is not essential, but it benefits health. Paul argues that it doesn't in adults, but he has not said very much about what happens in young children, except that babies are exposed to relatively low levels of fluoride in mother's milk. But that doesn't say anything about what happens in young children, in adolescence and up to adulthood, and every study that I know of that has addressed the issue plus or minus fluoride in young children has come out with a clear, unequivocal answer. Fluoride in water improves dental health of young people.
We are going to have to wrap now, because this is an argument clearly that we as viewers, lay people, struggle with, because there's these diametrically opposed views keep on coming at us. Paul, a green solution to a major problem.
Nonsense. I notice the way that Mike keeps using the word natural. Well, what he's talking about natural is geology. Geology came first, biology came second. Nature's verdict on fluoride is in mother's milk. Nature's verdict is that she's never used fluoride in the mainstream of biochemistry. It's absolute nonsense to compare fluoride with iodine and selenium, known nutrients, known to do some good inside the body. If fluoride does any good at all, it's topical, and the Centre of Disease Control has said that. The predominant benefit of fluoride is topical. But Mike may sound very, very influential here with his arguments, but he and his cohorts have not persuaded the majority of countries worldwide to do the same thing. Put fluoride in the drinking water. 97% of Europe doesn't do it. Most of the people drinking fluoridated water live in the United States.
So the last word on this from you is what? That you're saying it's not a natural solution.
Yeah, it's
you're
not,
saying it's a contrived solution.
Yeah, it's unnatural, it's unsafe, it's ineffective according to the Cochrane Review. It's unnecessary. And most countries have shown that it's unnecessary. And you can't show me, Mike, that those European countries that don't fluoridate their water have suffered. And you can't, and I would invite you and your colleagues, even at this late date, to start examining the successful techniques in Scotland, in Denmark, which have managed to get better tooth decay, less tooth decay than New Zealand without using this draconian system of forcing everybody to swallow a toxic substance.
Well, Paul, thank you for the last word. And Mike, for your last word, or second to last word. We hope that both views got an airing on the program tonight. And this is a subject that is, of course, going to excite interest for a good time yet, because it is such a passionate contest of opinion. Thank you both for joining us on Thinking Green.